He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Hey, thanks for joining us, folks. It's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast with Dr. Philip Ovadia, and we have a guest today that I know just enough about to be absolutely ravenous with curiosity. Brian Peskin. Real quick, Brian, I'm going to read the bio from your website, and I'll just go ahead and let folks know. Brian Peskin, exactly like it sounds. Professor Brian Peskin is a world-leading scientist specializing in parent EFA, essential fatty acid, termed PEOs, while advancing the scientific understanding of the role of essential fatty acids in the body's metabolic pathways. He's also advanced the discoveries of Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg to increase cellular oxygenation. And he has a fascinating educational background that got me excited. And I'm not going to say any more. So, Phil, how in the world did you find this guy? And let's talk to him.
Yeah, definitely. So, like you, I'm excited. I've been digging in a little bit to Professor Brian's work here and excited to maybe talk about some of the implications for what we're so interested in: heart disease, diabetes, metabolic health. But Professor Peskin certainly seems to have a lot of research, scientific background, and some interesting, maybe somewhat novel takes on some of this. Maybe before we get to that, I guess one of my questions, which will lead into your background, is you got your degree in electrical engineering, and now you're
here. MIT. Yeah.
Yep. And now you're here talking about fatty acids and heart disease. Maybe make the connection how you got from one to the other.
Yeah, sure. Personal. My wife became type 1 diabetic in her 30s, doing, quote, everything right. Goes to California at the Whitaker Institute, comes back, her blood sugars are worse. This was a complex carbohydrate guy, which is absolute garbage, by the way. Complex carbs are no better than simple carbs. They're actually worse. But her blood sugars were worse. And I said, why don't they give you the results when you're there? Because they mail them to you. I said, I know why. Because nobody paid for it. His program is a complete failure. So as Brian, I don't know what to do. This was way back. This was a long time ago. She was in her 30s, so 30 years ago. And exercising her tail off, high carb diet, did everything the normal stuff was. And she's getting worse. Luckily, I live in Houston. We have MD Anderson Cancer Center, biggest cancer center in the world. Jesse Jones Library, one of the top 10 medical research libraries in America, 300,000 volumes, medical textbooks, journals. So they were very kind to let me spend about 4 years there researching things. And I tried to fix diabetes because, it's personal. I failed type 1. I can't bring it back, but no one else in the world can either. I ended up being able to mitigate some of the complications, diabetic retinopathy, diabetic neuropathy, but I could not bring back the pancreas. So the people at MD Anderson were very kind because I wasn't a member of their institution, wasn't the university, a hospital, but they let me spend 4 years researching there, and it was, my goodness, the science is on the left. What everybody's being told is on the right. Somebody's got to start writing about this and get the truth out. So I specialize, Doc, in giving medical professionals, mainly MDs, DOs, scientific medical information they haven't seen. So I'm not going to waste time regurgitating garbage that people already know. I'm going to give you the insights that people haven't seen. And I think what I'm going to say about cardiology may even shock you, but we'll see. So you can let me know. But I will uniquely give medical references to everything I say. And what I'm very good at is connecting the dots because I'm an engineer. So input's the food, system is your body, and the output is your state of health. It's real simple. So I deduced very early on the problem must be in the food because wealthy people get heart attacks all over the place, cancer, diabetes. Poor people do. Socioeconomics don't make a big difference. Of course, the poorer people are, the sicker they are. They can't afford to do what wealthier people can do, but it's not a big of enough difference. It's all in the food. And I started researching Otto Warburg's work, MD, PhD, Nobel Prize winner, greatest physiologist of the 20th century. And it was, my goodness, everything is in the cell membrane. It's not the nucleus, that's changed. The membrane, MEM, should be BRAIN instead of BRANE, because it's the brain of the cell. And it's all in the adulterated oils because we have 100 trillion cells with a bilipid membrane. It's a double circle around it. And 25 to 35% are what I term parent essential oils. That's parent omega-6, LA,
25
parent
to 30%
omega-3,
of what?
ALA. Pardon me?
25 to 30% of what?
Of the membrane composition.
Okay.
It's the
All right.
brick and mortar of the cell. Virtually no DHA, EPA. This is the big fish oil garbage that people are saying. It's absolutely wrong. It's not based on science. We'll talk about it. And this comes from the structure, the brick and mortar, Harper's Illustrated Biochemistry, textbook of medical physiology, which is the #1 physiology textbook in North America for 22 years. I give you the science, and I want to make this very clear to everybody. A lot of people in the medical field think studies are science. Nothing could be further from the truth. The science should predict the study. The study should not be opposite to the science, and this is what infuriates me. And all of America has been misled, taking supraphysiologic overdoses of fish oil. By the way, fish oil is antifreeze for a fish. It makes it where the fish can't freeze because in 30-degree water, as you well know, a human being is mainly water. We would turn into a block of ice. So nature has two choices: either alcohol, in which case you'd have a drunk fish, or what's called long chain fatty acids. They don't freeze either. And that is the choice. So that's why they're there. But Dr. Rowan, who's a brilliant integrative functional medicine MD, said, Brian, the warm water fish has 14 times less DHA in it than the cold water fish at 30 degrees. So what are we doing in America? We're at 98.6. We're taking supraphysiological overdoses of DHA, EPA, and they spontaneously become rancid, which the analogy is turning to rust at room temperature. This is why fish used to smell horrible in the supermarket. Now they spray it and treat it with everything so you don't get that smell, but it oxidizes spontaneously. So what's happened, and then I'll let you start asking some questions, I'm sure you have them. All the antioxidants are coming from everywhere in the body, rushing in, going, what is this person doing eating this processed fish oil? I'm getting hundreds times physiologic overdose. I'm bringing in all my antioxidants to combat this. And then the other places like the brain don't have enough. Gee, do we see an epidemic of Alzheimer's and dementia? Yeah. And it completely coincides with the increase in fish oil products. So that's what's happening. All the poor antioxidants keeping the brain healthy are going into your bloodstream going, what did this person do? And it's all misguided. So that's a little bit of the background, but this is my field. I stay here. I work this day and night, and cardiology is my #1 thing. Easy Trek can actually reduce inflammation and impede the progression and reverse coronary artery calcium, which is by far the #1 predictor of heart disease. So that's my big thing right now. So it's exciting as heck, and I appreciate you having me on, Doc.
Yeah, definitely. And excited to get into that. Let's get some basics out of the way first. So you mentioned this term parent essential oils,
Yes.
PEO, not a term that I think most people will be familiar with.
Correct.
We've heard, I think most people have heard of maybe essential fatty acids.
That's what they are.
About. Okay. So
I don't like the word acid because people think it's like battery acid, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's just a chemical structure. So this term is used, parent essential, is used in the medical literature, but not often. So you're right, there's two types. Linoleic acid, which is the omega-6, everybody on the internet is saying is inflammatory and harmful and going to kill you. Plant seed oils, it's horrible. I'll completely dispel that myth. And parent omega-3, which is ALA, alpha linolenic acid. I'm an engineer. I don't care about the term, so it's like MIT. It's easy to spell, but I care about the understanding. All anybody needs to know is parent omega-6, parent omega-3 must come from food. The body cannot make one from the other. They can in a cow, but we're not a cow, so you got to be very careful with animal analogies. And if you don't get these, you are deficient in 100 trillion cells. Would you expect there to be a problem? Heck yeah. I may not know what they are, but enormous. You have a cell membrane that's not working, and fish oil, marine oil, I don't care if it's krill, oyster, mollusk, squid, it's irrelevant. We are not living in 30-degree water that needs antifreeze. So very good. There's two flavors.
Yeah. So the omega-6, omega-3, and
Parents.
It sounds like what you're saying, our main issue around these, because there's seems to be issues around these, especially the omega-6, is where we're getting them from, what source, what, form we're getting them in.
You got it right in the
not
head.
Something, linoleic acid in the proper form and the proper amounts may not be harmful, but we've kind of gone and screwed this all up thinking that, some is good, so more must be better.
The omega-6, as long as it is organic, unprocessed, and fully functional, is what you need in the cell membrane. The toxic, the poisonous is one word: processed. Nature never expected the oil manufacturers to process it. And they do it to get long shelf life, because you can't have bagels or rice or pasta smelling like fish has gone bad. So they process it. And as long as it's not processed, it is the brick and mortar of that cell. And by and large, all foods are highly skewed to the parent omega-6 everywhere. About the only thing that doesn't have a lot of parent omega-6 is grass, which is food for a cow, and something like lettuce, which is basically all water. Now, what you'll get is people going, oh, walnuts are wonderful for the omega-3. Yeah, but they have 5 times more omega-6. Nature wants a pile of omega-6. Even the cow, if it's grass-fed, which is huge amounts of parent omega-3, gets about a 2-to-1 ratio of omega-6. Even the cow doesn't want the omega-3. It burns it up. The problem with us is if you take excess DHA, it gets shoved into the normal cells and screws up everything. But let me give you this. This, you may remember, you may not remember. 2009, American Heart Association, quote, incorrect to view the omega-6 fatty acids as pro-inflammatory. That reflects a rather naive understanding of the biochemistry. It looks like this reviewer saw some of my work because I'm very derogatory sometimes. That reflects a rather naive understanding of the biochemistry. The omega-6 are not pro-inflammatory. Journal of the American Heart Association, one of the top medical journals, you read, omega-6 fatty acids and risk for cardiovascular disease. So that was enormous, 2009. Problem in the medical field, Doc, is they never look back at the history. I'm always starting today in 2024. As opposed to engineering, where you watch the Discovery Channel and it's, oh, the brilliant engineer of today Stood on the shoulders of the guy from 30 years ago, who stood on the shoulders of the guy from 50 years ago. We never see that in medicine. It always starts here, and that's why it just goes in a circle. So it's the same stuff. Ketogenic diet is fine now. High carb was good 30 years. It just goes back in a circle. And it's the same nutrition as telling you ketogenic now. Weren't you the one that said high carbs before? Yeah. You don't understand anything. You're just a parrot. So my big term is parity. And I hate that. And what most people don't understand is, even the medical journals, all of this stuff is just taken carte blanche from the last journal. The charts are the same. The person writing the article has absolutely no understanding of what the heck he's even talking about. And it's horrible. I'm a hardcore science guy. 2 and 2 is 4. You don't like it, that's nice. Talk your opinion with politics or art. But if you design the roof of a building, it will crash if you think 2 and 2 is 6, and you're going to kill hundreds of people. Problem with medicine is you can make mistakes, and typically the patient doesn't die right off the bat. It's a very tough one, but science can rule, and I live in physiology, and it is amazing. Here's another great one, came out in 2018. Nobody saw it. Here's the thing. I live in the journal articles, typically in physiology, like I said, Journal of Lipids, Journal of Biological Chemistry. Fish, krill, marine oils ruin the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the energy producers in every cell. So if you don't have energy, what do you get? Congestive heart failure, for number one. Causes lack of cellular energy. And here's their quote. Frontiers of Cardiovascular Medicine and Journal of Biological Chemistry, 2018. And the problem is, the hardcore science journal articles never make it into the clinical ones. What I mean by clinical is Journal of the American Medical Association, so the listeners understand, Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, the clinical ones. So you got the science over here, but it never translates, which is very sad. Parent omega-6, that's the omega-6 everybody on the internet is saying is so bad, fixes the damage, the major remodeling in the cardiolipin. Cardiolipin is the inner layer of the mitochondria. And mitochondria, there's hundreds per cell. So we have 100 trillion cells. You can have 100 mitochondria in every cell. They're the energy producers. And the inner layer of the mitochondria is supposed to be all parent omega-6. There's big people on the internet misleading you and even lying, saying it's supposed to be omega-3.
Back up. I want you to repeat that. The inner
layer of cardiolipin, which is the inner layer of your mitochondria, is supposed to be all parent omega-6. Not omega-3, not fish oil, not DHA. If that goes in there, you will have no energy, and that contributes directly to congestive heart failure, as Doc will be able to tell you.
Even though these things are omega-6 fatty acids, they're the wrong flavor,
If they're processed, they're poison. So the omega-6 series has the unique distinction of either being essential critical, if it's organic unprocessed, or poison, the analogy of rust, if they are processed. So number one thing, if nobody gets anything else out of hearing me talk for an hour, any cooking oil you get at the supermarket, make darn sure it's organic. That's the only guarantee you get. There's no pesticides in the growing, and there's no chemicals or excess heat in the oil processing. So it's 100% fully functional as nature intended, because if it's not in there, it won't work.
I wanted, this is something we got to drill down into, because for the last, I don't know how many years, we've heard over and over again, warnings about the dangers of processed vegetable oils.
Correct. Processed. You hit it right in the head.
Well,
and they've all forgotten the word processed or adulterated, and it's just become vegetable oils will kill you.
Yes,
Correct.
that was
But
where I was
there's
going.
one word
The
called an
story.
adjectives. They need to go back to English high school.
So
They don't know what the heck an
give us
adjective
some
is.
examples of, for lack of a better word, healthy omega-6.
Sure, you get them from best source is plant-based seed oils.
But
Now,
where do
you
we
get
find
some from
that?
food when you eat. Yeah. What was your
So,
question?
yeah, I guess the question that Jack is getting at, and that I think a lot of our audience will be confused by, is how do you get these oils without processing them, right? The whole kind of concern around these seed oils is the very steps necessary to extract them from the seed, is what's causing some
Excellent
of this
question.
damage.
Organically processed. They don't use the chemicals and they don't have the excess heat. So the medical food I developed called Easy Trek has all organic oils, no chemicals, and that's a hydrogenated oil. You've probably heard margarine can be in the garage for a year, right? And
Oh,
it
yeah.
never goes
Right.
bad. That's a hydrogenated oil. New York came by and said, no trans fats. And when that came out, I said, guys, wait till you see what they're going to replace it with. And I said, it's going to be worse. And that's called an interesterified fat, which is horrible. And that raises blood sugar levels. So everybody's becoming diabetic. The key isn't a processed oil. You're not going to get around it. It can't be processed. It's just squeezed. You just put some pressure on it and keep it cool. You're done. But that's expensive.
So
And
cold pressed, like a
cold
pressed
press
olive
is a
oil.
start. It's a start. Olive oil has very few EFAs. Olive oil is omega-9. That's not the answer. So when you look at the essential oils, you have how bad are they? A negative. A trans fat and an interesterified fat is a -20. Olive oil is a 0. It's not processed, but it won't help you with the EFAs. And if you get the EFA containing oil, sunflower, safflower, evening primrose that is organic, that's a +20. So a lot of oils have no EFAs, the parent essential oils, parent omega-6, parent omega-3. Olive oil is all parent omega-9. Coconut oil is wonderful to fry in. And by the way, a saturated fat does not clog an artery. 87% of what clogs an artery is the adulterated omega-6. And this comes out of Felton, dietary polyunsaturated fatty acids, and composition of human aortic plaque in the Lancet. Identification, quantification, unique fatty acid oxidative products in human atherosclerotic plaque using high-performance lipid chromatography. So you can analyze this. Annals of Biochemistry. See, nobody's reading that. Structural elucidation of oxygenated lipids in human atherosclerotic lesions, eicosanoids. So these are out of the medical journals with quantitative analysis, not open to discussion, but doesn't make it into the regular journals the clinical physician sees. 87% of a clogged artery is not saturated fat, like we were told for 30 years. And this is all out of the biochemistry book. Saturated fat can't combine with anything. So if you know any biochemistry at all, the first thing is to even say that, you're crazy. How the heck can it combine? There's no binding space on it. It's saturated. There's nothing open. But we have been so misled. So cheese will not clog your artery. The processed omega-6 will. And that's the key. So it's a very precise science. And if people look at my website, brianpeskin.com, which you kindly said before, I get into all of this because this is trying to take a drink from a fire hose and nobody on the internet is giving it to you. So the whole key is organically grown and processed omega-6 cooking oils. And now what they've done is, because all the oils used are for frying, they've changed the strain. So you get sunflower, safflower oil. It's 95% oleic acid, which is like olive oil. They're not essential. Your body can make omega-9 just fine. but it can't make omega-6. So people go, Brian, I'm getting the organic sunflower and safflower oil from the store. Why don't I have the energy that you would have and stuff that you're claiming you do? I say, because you're getting the wrong strain. So it's a very precise science. And nobody, to my knowledge, except me and colleagues of mine that, are around me, get. Everybody else is either 20 years behind the times or just parroting what everybody else says and getting nowhere. It's a real tragic state of affairs. But when you get the right oils, artery is flexible. We get person after person with high blood pressure that starts Easy Trek to cut the inflammation. And the oils, remember I told you, 25 to 33% are actually the brick and mortar, go into the artery and make it flexible. Right now, if you don't have these oils, you have a straw. So you have 140 over 100 blood pressure. It gets flexible. That's the 120 over 80. 120, you get a negative 40 on it popping back, and that's your 80. So it is so simple when you understand this, but so few people understand it. I'm delighted you're giving me an opportunity to chat. And this is just so different from your hearing. I know.
Yeah.
And so what about, it? So first I'll say it's not all that different from what we hear. So I think we have a lot of points of agreement, right? With
one word, adulterated versus processed.
Exactly.
If they put that adjective in there, you wouldn't need me. But they are not doing it strongly enough. Today, finally, after 20 years, they're mentioning processed, but they don't really pound it, saying, if you're not getting organic, you are doomed. You're getting stuff that is insufficient. Just cold press by itself is a good start, but it's completely insufficient to what you need. It has to be organic, and that's where you spend the money. And it is more expensive, but I don't know any way around it.
And then, so what about, I guess, talk a little bit more about what role the animal fats are going to play then. We've established, and I think, again, accepted in this crowd that saturated fat is not a problem for our health.
Excellent.
So the cow has eaten the grass. The cow is able to make these PEOs, keep them in the right ratios.
Yes.
Assuming it's a healthy cow, and we could talk about different ways that you can make the cow unhealthy, but assuming you're getting, a healthy cow, can that just be your source of these PEOs?
It's very hard. In the old days, the answer would be you're 100% right. The problem today, Doc, is we're getting so much adulterated oils. Even your fine dining restaurants have been misled. So all the oils they're getting are processed and ruined too. Right. All the fast foods are horrific. And Dr. Lanz was brilliant in 1990, and others showed the oils go into the cell membrane in proportion to how much good to bad I get, which means if I'm eating 30% bad oils, I have 70% good oils in the cell membrane. If I'm eating 60 or 70% bad oils, like 99% of Americans are doing, I have 30 or 40% good oils in the cell membrane. And Dr. Warburg, who I stand on the shoulders of, conclusively showed 35% cellular oxygenation decrease, not the bloodstream, not the pulse oximeter number, cellular oxygenation decrease, 35% sustained over years. Cancer is spontaneously induced. You didn't feel it, you didn't see it, you didn't know it. Cellular. So it's all about the ratio.
Say that again.
Everything is the ratio of good oils to bad oils is what gets incorporated, because lipids are the
I think I understand what you just said. We've had Dr. Seifried, Thomas Seifried, on the show.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, cancer guy. Yeah.
He's worked through
Boston University. Yeah.
He's worked through with us the mechanism of cancer. And so everything I'm saying comes out of what I think I understand.
And Warburg, lack of cellular oxygenation. He got that from Warburg. Right.
So it's the adulterated
omega-6s
that are getting into the mitochondria of the cell that are essentially causing the cell to mutate or causing
The
the cell to mutate.
mitochondria and the cells themselves. Remember, the mitochondria are a separate entity inside the cell. We
Okay.
have 100 trillion cells, and they are screwing them up too. So it's a double bash in the face when you're having adulterated oils. You
And
hit it right
and
in
what
the head.
Warburg
Excellent.
what Warburg showed was you made a statement about he showed that the percentage of X to Y
Oxygen.
result,
Lack of cellular oxygenation is the prime cause of cancer.
and
There's
it's the
hundreds of secondary.
adulterated
There are omega-6 containing oils that do it. He
that
didn't
are
have that. So I came up with that after reading other people, but I stood on his shoulders going, what the heck can be causing this lack of cellular oxygenation? Then I came across
so they're
brilliant
essentially
D.
these adulterated oils are essentially asphyxiating the cell.
You got it. Cellular respiration is what it's called in the medical literature. So just as we breathe for our whole body, the cell is breathing via the mitochondria, and oxygen itself can disassociate in the cell membrane. The medical profession
What does
had
that
no
mean?
idea of this. And this came from Campbell in 76 with cystic fibrosis people.
What does
The
that mean? That oxygen can
partial
disassociate?
pressure of oxygen is the same as hemoglobin in the cell. So just the same way the red blood cell goes around, goes to the cell, take my oxygen. Once the cell membrane has the right structure, it can take its oxygen from the cell membrane and shove it into the inside of the cell. Virtually nobody knows that. They go, oh, it's just diffusing
What does
from the blood.
what does that
Wrong.
mean? What is the
You're
implication?
getting two sources of oxygen. I can get oxygen from the transport by the red blood cell into the cell. So the red blood cell comes, here's my oxygen, boom. Or the cell membrane itself can go, hey, I can give you some oxygen into the center of it directly. So there's two sources, but the medical profession doesn't recognize the second source because they don't know. Remember, I told you initially, I specialize in giving physicians medical information they likely haven't seen before.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't make it up. It's just I've seen it and I connect the dots, and unfortunately, almost no one else is. That's why the medical profession is 20 years out of touch with the current state of affairs. For example, Weinberg, originator of the term oncogene, another MIT guy, brilliant guy. 2010 reversed it. There's not enough genetic mutations to cause cancer. I was wrong. Inflammation takes center stage. Inflammation is the prime cause of cancer. I'm by MD Anderson. You think any of them know that? Nope. Nope. 20 years behind the times go, what? It's genetic. Nope. It's not genetic. That's why women having the BRCA gene, most of them don't get breast cancer. So if it's genetic, you'd have to go the preponderance of
Okay,
women.
whoa, you're
That
going
kind of
way
stuff,
too
right?
fast here.
Okay,
You're going
yeah.
way too fast. Women having the BRCA gene don't
Yeah.
get cancer.
The majority
A,
don't. The
okay,
majority don't.
I've never heard of the BRCA gene, but I'm a marketing guy, so why would I know? Go
Genetic.
slowly here. Phil, what's the BRCA gene?
So,
Yeah.
yeah, BRCA gene is a gene that is purported. I mean,
Yes.
I think this goes along with what the professor is saying, right? If you have this gene, there is an increased risk of things like breast and ovarian cancer in women. However, I would agree with what the professor has said. The majority of people who have the BRCA gene still don't get cancer. You might be at increased risk compared to someone who doesn't have this gene,
Excellent.
but it's not like it gives you 100% chance of developing cancer in your lifetime.
Or even 60%. I mean, it's very close. It's a very weak association. And I'm all about cause effect.
Oh,
So I
okay.
care
So
about,
what you're saying is that the BRCA gene, if the prior model of cancer was accurate, then
yes.
people with this gene
Yep.
would have a significantly statistically higher incidence of cancer, but they don't. Therefore,
Excellent
that
deduction. You got
invalidates
it.
the prior model.
You got
Yeah.
it. So that
So
shows
cause
the
and
Okay.
effect.
Like I said, you were just going a little too fast for me.
You mentioned,
Yeah.
inflammation as
Yeah.
being a primary driver of cancer. Inflammation also a primary driver of heart disease.
And
I would
7
say
other diseases. Most diseases, wouldn't you agree?
most diseases, exactly.
Yeah, it's forefront now. It didn't used to be, but everything today is inflammation, COPD, high
Yep.
blood pressure, cardiovascular, like you said, even diabetes, type 1, type 2. And even if I'm shooting insulin or taking oral medication, I specialize in the delta 6 desaturase metabolic pathway. And the reason I'm talking this is because you get your cellular anti-inflammatory. It's called PGE1, which is prostaglandin series 1. So you decrease that inflammatory pathway and everything starts healing. So the biggest problem in America, bottom line, is everybody is in a state of chronic inflammation. And this came out.
You don't have to convince our audience of that.
It came out in 2017. Here's the quote: majority of cells hypersensitive to changes of their membrane lipids induced by the diet. Inflammation is now known as key in the medical journal article states. This is a game changer. Marine oils from the sea instantly become rusted, inflammatory, and the processed seed oils too. What causes the inflammation? Simple. Processed omega-6. They never process the omega-3 cooking oils. You don't cook in flax oil. You don't cook in fish oil, right? It's too reactive. So they know that. And here's a fact that'll knock you off your chair. DHA is 7 times more reactive to oxidation than parent omega-6. So when you're talking seed oils are inflammatory, guys that are big fish oil proponents, what about your DHA? I've never seen one give this. And this is on my website from either Esabasher or there's a couple people that are excellent at measuring oxidation in seed oils and fish oil. And it's right there. You can look at the reference, but it's easy to measure. And nobody is giving anybody the truth. But parent omega-6 is 7 times more resistant to becoming bad, to oxidizing, than DHA in fish oil. You ever seen that before?
And so what about EPA? We now have a prescription grade, prescription strength EPA product that's supposed to help lower heart disease. What's your take on EPA now?
Yeah, there's Epanova, Lavazza. For anybody that doesn't know, EPA is the precursor to DHA. Has 5 double bonds. DHA has 6. And what's been conclusively shown is to have any oxidation problem in the body, you need at least 3 double bonds. So omega-6 going bad in the body is next to 0. And even Dr. Spiteler, who's one of the top German biochemists, and I've talked to him, shareholder, brilliant guy, all the damage to the omega-6 series is done outside the body from the food processors. He wrote about this extensively. And that's the problem. So EPA and DHA are interconvertible, meaning EPA goes to DHA and DHA can go back. It's retroconvertible to EPA. So they're the same pool. Body uses what it wants as needed. I know there's some drugs trying to make claims. I think they're delusional. It doesn't matter in the least which one you're getting, EPA, DHA. But we are so misled. Once again, what is clogging an artery? Oxidized parent omega-6. There's no DHA in there. There is a little bit of cholesterol because cholesterol is a healer. And while we're on the subject, what is cholesterol? Actually, it's the cholesterol.
Get into it.
The cholesterol molecule is tied to the PEOs. They transport it. Okay? So you got to go in the bloodstream. How's this stuff? It's not just floating around on its own. It's called a lipoprotein. So it's a water-soluble fat. How do you do it? Oil and water don't mix, right? Tie it to a protein, magnetize it, string it along. So cholesterol is the transporter of these oils. And even Goldblatt, the winner of the Nobel Prize for cholesterol, said and published we need to be looking at what the cholesterol is transporting. Is technically termed esterified cholesterol with the PEOs, but he stopped there. That's where I live. It's all in that. And here's another one. There's no cholesterol sensor in the bloodstream. Textbook metaphysiology doesn't exist. Oh, that's a genetic blah, blah. Oh, really?
What does
You
that
have
mean?
one for sugar, it's 1 part in 1,000. You have one for sodium, calcium, potassium. Why isn't there one for cholesterol? Because from my math and physics background, it's called a dependent variable. When everything else is set, cholesterol is what it is. But here's an interesting one. You start putting in more of the fully functional parent omega-6, the LDL-C goes down. So the doctors, I don't give a darn about it, but the doctors I work with, because they're so ingrained with, LDL low, are over the moon. So Dr. Rob at MD Anderson tried my oils in about 100 patients. Their LDL-C went down phenomenally. He was shocked. And here's what statins tried to do. Remember, the esterified part is the good and the bad oils. So if you lower it, you're lowering the bad oils, right? Problem is, you're also lowering the good oils. So the answer isn't lower the whole darn structure. The answer is put more good oils in, then you need less LDL-C automatically, and it displaces the bad oils. Remember, I told you with lambs and others, goes in as a percentage of what you're consuming. So the best thing everybody can do is make sure you're getting these organic oils and minimize the junk you're eating from the restaurants and processed oils.
So we're looking.
Go ahead, Jack.
What our audience is looking for.
Yep.
Is, remember, our audience is primarily lay people like me.
Of course.
Not researchers, not physicians. They're folks who, I put on 30 pounds. I can't seem to take it off. I've done everything they tell me to, and nothing's
right.
changing. What do I do? So we're looking for actionable steps that the average person can take. If you've listened to this show for any period of time, you know it's not smart to be consuming processed seed oils. That's
perfect.
If you don't know that after having listened to this show for a while, you're not listening very closely.
Actually, you're one of the few that gets it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of been. We've had lots of folks who've talked about that. The typical
There's
listener
three things you need to know about that.
Will have extracted from their diet processed foods that have processed oils. The typical listener will have a diet that is tilted toward what Phil likes to call whole real foods.
Excellent.
And that's not a scientific definition, but it'll point people in the right direction.
Closer to raw foods, like my colleague that wrote PEO Solution, Dr. Rowan. He's a pure raw foods vegan, but that's 1 in 10,000. You're not going to get him. So what I tell people is try and minimize the processed stuff. Remember, they're everywhere. Yeah. So you need a supplement to counteract it. And Easy Trek, I developed.
I think this is where I'm lost.
Yeah.
So I extract from my diet all the processed foods, and I basically
as much as you can. It's not all of them. It's what you are aware of. I'll give you that. There's no way on earth you're getting rid of all of them. You can't do it. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. They're in anything you get, from the cheapest restaurant to the most fine dining, because they don't know either. They think they're helping you, but you're getting this stuff, period. Because I've had people try and do it without a supplement, and they all end up getting disorders. My comment today is because it's ubiquitous, and this was called activation of the unfolded protein response by lipid bilayer stress. So if you're getting any of the adulterated oil You have 100 trillion cells in chronic inflammation. You can't afford very much of this at all, or you're always turned on. That's how serious this is. So everybody needs to make this their number one supplement. Take the vitamins and everything else, that's a far cry down. The adulteration of the oils is center stage to combat the inflammation. So you need the parent omega-6, you need the parent omega-3, unprocessed, and you better have an oil that has GLA from evening primrose oil to compensate for the impairment in those 9 diseases and disorders of the delta 6 desaturase. So it's not just get rid of the junk, it's you need to know what you're doing. And if these 3 things aren't together, it's not sufficient. You're still going to have inflammation. The reason you need the GLA from evening primrose is to help compensate for that impairment in delta 6. And if you have a disease, disorder, or inflammation, that delta 6 pathway is screwed. I can't bring it back. I don't fix it. All I can do, and I'm as good as you're going to get, is help nutritionally compensate for it. Why it's gone, I don't know, but neither does anybody else in the world, so I don't feel too bad. Luckily, thank God we can compensate for it, is my comment to people. And the proof is it works. Just had one guy a couple months ago, high blood pressure, since he was 16, African-American, on 2 blood pressure meds. Hypertension is in the family. Still couldn't get the blood pressure down even with the 2 meds. Starts Easy Trek, which is a medical food, which is above a supplement for diseases and disorders, inflammatory based. And with a medical food, you can make a claim legally with the FDA about what this is helping. So we help nutritionally compensate for an impaired delta 6, leading to excess inflammation because you're not getting enough of the prostaglandin series 1. His blood pressure is superb, and he's off of one of the drugs. His blood pressure went down even with the drugs because the structure, remember I told you, it becomes from a straw to flexible. These oils are actually the brick and mortar. They're not like most nutritional, quote, supplements that help a metabolic pathway, like a vitamin is a coenzyme, which simply means it helps a chemical reaction go faster. These oils are in the cell structure. You can't compensate it away. I exercise all the time. Good for you. You're going to get good muscles. You're going to get a better stroke of the heart, but you're not going to change the physiology of what the brick and mortar is in a cell. How can exercise do that? It's a different mechanism. You got to understand the seriousness of this problem, and I hope people will check out my website because it won't cost you a nickel. There's all kinds of stuff there where you get the science. I mean, this is all I have done for the past 25 years. And we are the world leaders in anti-inflammation, period. So C-reactive protein goes down. We can measure all this. I'm not just yapping. So you can take my word for it.
That was one of the questions that occurred to me was when you talk about inflammation going down, we're talking about actually testing the H1C.
Yeah.
What it is, Phil?
A1C is
A1C.
Your A1C is related to diabetes. The main inflammation markers I think most people look at: C-reactive protein, big one. All my patients, we test it on a regular basis.
Excellent.
You know, things like your SED rate, or ESR, it's going to be called, is another common inflammation marker that people will look at. And then you can look at other indicators of inflammation that might be things like, and this is going to get deeper in the woods, but we have things like uric acid, we have ferritin, we have myeloperoxidase, LPP2. There's a lot of them, but C-reactive protein is
that's the gold standard, right?
One, that I look at with my patients. And C-reactive protein has been very strongly associated with heart disease, cancer,
Systemic
Alzheimer's,
inflammation.
all of the things
Systemic
that we going down the list. Just a little bit more on the what people can do. What are there particular foods that you advocate people to eat? We talked about what not to eat, but are there particular foods that you would advocate people eating to also help, raise the levels of these PEOs?
Hey guys, welcome to.
I'll tell you one not to take cod liver oil. The women taking cod liver oil got 3 times the melanoma. This was in the 70s, and they hushed up the study in 70,000 people because you always get that, cod liver oil from this. You'll increase your risk of melanoma. So natural foods are best. So any of the meats that have fat. So anything with fat, you want organic or natural. Eggs, bacon, butter, cheese, cream. Because all the residues, steroids, hormones go into the fat. Even in our own body, when people start losing weight, all the toxins are released. That's why, I'm on a diet, I'm losing the weight, but I'm exhausted. Because the toxins are flooding out and they're not taking a detoxifier. So it's problematic. But any of the foods, and there's still a lot of good oils in the food, because if it was zero good, we'd all be dead. You wouldn't be having any anti-inflammatory PGE1. That's not the case. So the impairment may be 20%, but if you're on the borderline and you're diabetic, you can't afford being on the border because, for example, every type 2 ultimately ends up being type 1 if you go over enough. And by the way, pre-1940, from the diabetic endocrinologist, type 2 diabetes didn't exist. Doc told me that. I fell off my chair. So I was the first to say diabetes, for the most part, to create a disease unknowingly. You don't know what you're doing it. Then Dr. Rowan went over to South India, which is the worst diabetic population on the planet. Indians from India, the vegetarians. Goes, Brian will tell you why. They're cooking everything in screwed up oils, everything they do. So he confirmed exactly it because he was over there, helping people on a mission type thing. So it's all the oils. And if you don't get more in as a supplement, you're going to have a problem. It's just when you get it. Do you get it now or do you get it 10 years later? Oh, you're going to get all the diseases just because of age. Why the heck do you think that is? Because over time, you have more and more accumulation of the junk oils. It has nothing to do with having to be a zombie at 90 years old. You should be 90 years old and fine. My mother takes Easy Trek, 92, and she's even fallen twice. Broke her hip. It healed. Fell on her face. Complete healing. And she can outthink almost anybody at 92. And there's just no excuse to be going down the tubes at all. And like I say, it's a medical food, which means you need to be under a physician care, but they don't need to be writing a script for it. So, Doc, I mean, with your heart disease patients, you will not believe what this does. Like I was telling you off air, coronary artery calcium, the #1 marker of coronary event down the road, we've shown it reverses it. Not just stops the progression, actually reverses existing year after year. So it's exciting as heck because there's no pharmaceutical that can do this, and it works on the anti-inflammatory pathway. So that proves inflammation. It's like bone is being deposited in your artery. It's a screwed up maladaptive process. You shouldn't be going in there, but that's what happens when you get metabolic pathways that are screwed up. So it's very exciting. So we get the calcium gone, which directly increases the flexibility of the artery and makes the blood pressure go down. That's
and that's some data that I'm certainly going to be interested in looking at.
I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you.
And we've the focus of my practice is doing exactly that, stopping the progression and reversing coronary calcification. Very exciting to hear this. And I know your team was good enough to provide some links and I think a discount code for people that might be interested in this. So we'll certainly be all that into the show notes. I guess, my kind of wrapping question for you is going to be, how people should, I guess, evaluate, where this kind of stands in their life. We mentioned testing for inflammation and their blood work. Obviously, you have the end disease processes that people get to that we've mentioned, but ideally you want to attack this before then. Are there some other things that might indicate whether it might be blood work or symptoms or whatever it is?
Give you the number one thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Stop taking any fish oil, marine oil, krill oil supplements. And I'll tell you why. Here's how much have either of you ever seen anything published? How much DHA is the brain use a day? Have a guess? The average fish oil capsule is 1,000 milligrams. It's 60% active DHA. So in 1,000 milligram capsule of fish oil, you're getting 600 milligrams of DHA. I'm an engineer. I'd start with, how much does the brain use a day? Never seen anybody in the world ask that except me. Guess. Have you ever seen it? Either one of you?
I would
right now,
know.
no. I'll give you the number. 2 to 6. No more than 6 milligrams a day. But Brian, the eyes got it too. Fine, double it, 12. And you want to put in some more for good measure, 15. Okay, I'll give you 15 milligrams a day in the body. A day. One fish oil capsule is 600. What is 600 divided by 15? 40. You take one fish oil capsule a day, you're getting 40 times more DHA on a daily basis, and the entire medical profession is, oh, we don't get enough DHA, you need 4 capsules. So 40 times 4 is 160 times. Put that in perspective, take 160 aspirin, call me in the morning. Don't do it, I'm being facetious, you'll be dead. You will bleed to death. This is what the health profession is telling the average person that doesn't know anything, to take 160 times overdose of what they need. And it displaces the parent omega-6. It doesn't just get burned up. This is why skin cancer is through the roof and the dermatologists don't have a clue. Skin, 100% parent omega-6. Inner lining of the artery, doc, intima, it's all parent omega-6. 70 million capillaries in the brain, 100% omega-6. Dementia, Alzheimer's, now known as a cardiovascular disease. Went to Methodist Hospital seminar 2 years ago. It's not the beta amyloid garbage. That is because the cell is falling apart because of the defective membrane with the parent omega-6 that's adulterated. And it's spilling out the protein, beta amyloid. That's not the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is I don't have the nutrient transfer with the oxygen. You start putting back the oils, the cellular structure starts coming. So stop the fish oil. I am the biggest anti-fish oil guy on the planet. They hate my guts because I'm taking a lot of money out of their pocketbook. And then they have to answer, hey, this guy Peskin said how bad this is, gave some references. You're saying how great it is. Where are your references? This study says the studies, they're all reversed today. Every study coming out is failure. Because you only need 2 to 6. How the hell can more help you? You're a brain. And here's the hack. How can it be so low? Excellent question. The half-life of DHA in the brain is 2.5 years. What?
Wow.
The same molecule of DHA stays there for 2.5 years? Yeah. How can that happen? Because you have antioxidants in the brain. Except when you're taking the super physiologic overdose of a processed supplement, which fish oil is, then all the antioxidants from the brain go get into the bloodstream and help this idiot. He's trying to kill me. Now your brain oxidizes, and you got our president. You saw that. I'm not saying anything new here. He was thrown out.
That's a great way to wrap it. And if you disappear one day, we'll certainly be looking for the big fish oil executives to be behind it.
They don't like me.
Yeah,
I've been threatened to be sued by them. They don't like me, but you can't beat the science. And once again, where does this come from? You have 100 trillion cells, a quarter to a third, molecular biology of the cell, Harper's Illustrated Biochemistry, textbook of medical physiology. The 2 to 6 milligrams a day, that was NIH and U.S. Department of Agriculture. Imaging incorporation of circulating DHA into the human brain. Pretty much says it all, doesn't it? How much DHA is going into the human brain via positron emission testing. That's PET, a PET scan. Journal of Lipids Research. Once again, Doc, never made it into JAMA, never made it into Lancet, never made it into New England Journal of Medicine, and that's precisely why you never saw it. So it's tragic. The medical community doesn't know this. And I don't know what the heck you do to get it out there, because I'm one guy. You know, I got a big voice, I'm passionate, but I'm one guy. And I'm going against this monster of fish oil that's killing everybody.
That's what we're hoping to do, is bring this certainly to our audience and beyond.
Thank you. Can't thank you
so
enough.
Again, the book is called The PEO Solution.
Yeah.
And brianpeskin.com is where you can go get some more information. I know you have lots of science on the websites, which is great. And I think this has been a
and they can look at the medical food, Doc, Easy Trek. If they just pull that up, it'll tell you, you know, where to look about it. Good for Health is the exclusive distributor, but they can read about it and see what it does. Remember, that's for diseases and disorders. So heart disease, cancer. There's other things to keep you healthy, given that you just want to keep the EFA structure okay. But the latest one with the medical food Easy Trek, that's really knocking the medical profession, giving them a new tool. You know, in America, the results are just, if I didn't invent this and got the doctor feedback, I'd go, I can't believe it works this fast. You're delusional. But I talk to the physicians that are using it, and I know them, and they don't lie. There's no reason to make this up. But it's, my God, you know, we've had COPD people off of oxygen within 30 days. And that's because PGE1 is vasodilator. So it opens up the arterial pathway. Boom, the nutrients come in, the oxygen comes in. Same thing in the brain. 20 years ago, I could never talk like a bat out of hell like this. I'd be as slow as everybody else. And I think as fast too. Just imagine your children have this kind of speed and thinking. No AD, I mean, just, it doesn't exist today. Everybody is brain dead. I go to Starbucks and I say, I want this, and they repeat it, and it's wrong every time. I go everywhere, and everybody else is confirming this. It is horrible today.
Now we know what has been Brian Peskin's motivation all this time. The people in Starbucks keep screwing up his order, and he said, "What can I do?" And
personal.
He helped save the
always
world.
Is a personal effect,
so that we could get a decent cup of coffee on time.
They do it the way they're told, and they can remember it. People today they have no memory. Have you guys noticed that? The memory is down to nothing, and the cognitive skills are next to nothing. I'm just appalled, because I monitor this, you know, every couple of years, but now it's getting worse by the month. You tell them something and they screw it up a minute later. I didn't say that. I went to a cat store, got some cat food. What's your name? Peskin. P as in parent. E-S-K-I-N. Half a minute goes by. Did you find me? Can you spell that again? P as in parent. E-S-K-I-N. Another half minute goes by. How about now? That's B. I said, no. P as in parent. Here's the card. Just read. And this was a 20-year-old kid.
I think it was George Bernard Shaw who said, all progress is due to the unreasonable man. Something to that effect.
Well put.
So,
I'm reasonable. I just get irritated with incompetence. I don't suffer fools likely, you know, easily. And if I do something stupid, call me an idiot too. I'm the first one to do it. You're an idiot. Who are you talking to? Me.
Well, Professor
It doesn't
Peskin,
happen often. Doesn't happen often.
You have given us, this has been like drinking from the fire hose. Thank God we've got your website.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. You can go over it on the website to your heart's content. It's the opposite of what you've been heard and misled with, and you've heard the wrong stuff for hundreds of times, so it's in there. It's got to be replaced with scientific fact, and that I'm happy to do. This is my whole life. This is all I do. One trick pony. I'm real good at very little. That's what I tell people. I'm good at this. If you ask me something and I don't know, I'm obligated to say I don't know. Now, because I started in the center of the circle with the oils being key to everything, I've been fortunate to go out to the radius on the circumference and extend it. Doctors asked me to write a book on what do you eat, so we did 24-hour diet. I had the hidden story of cancer starting with Warburg. That was the first one in 2004, 2006, after 4 or 5 years at MD Anderson. It's extended, but it all starts from being right in the center. You can't go on the circle and get to the center. Doesn't work that way. You got to be right in the center and then go out. You can't go out and then go in. I've never come across anybody that gets it. It's called consistency. It's like a mathematical consistent equation. Doesn't matter how I get there, it's always the same answer. Everybody else has exceptions, and I'm not big on that. If I'm not 80% successful, I failed. That's a pretty high standard. Most in the medical profession with drugs, 10%, 1%, statin is 2%. Brilliant, $13 billion drug. To me, it's complete failure. It's like I make 100 iPhones, 90 blow up in your face. Yeah, Brian, but that's 10% success. But I just killed 90 people. That's failure. Not in the medical field, it's not. It's just so, my standards, because I'm an engineer, I can't make a mistake, because someone's life will go immediately and they pin it on me. In the medical field, they'll still die, but they can't pin it on the drug that should have never been approved because the pharmaceutical companies mislead the FDA. I want to make this very clear. The FDA tries. The FDA is really very good. We've dealt with them a lot, but they get misled by the pharma companies. That's the problem. And why is the pharma company doing it? Because you're talking billions of dollars. There's no conspiracy.
You're preaching to the choir now.
Yeah.
That's going to be
money can be made in the billions. Will they take a big risk? Yeah. That's it.
Those are going to be some great things that we can get into when we have him back on, because there's certainly going to need to be a part 2 for this one, Jack.
Well, sure. I hope you'll get some easy trek in your patients. If you pop me an email, and when we're done, I'll give you my email and I'll get you the science. And I guarantee you put 5 patients on it, you will fall out of your chair with the results within 90 days. All we ask for 90 days, tops.
Professor Peskin, do you happen to have, or Phil, do you happen to have that discount code? I don't have, can't lay my hands on the email.
I don't, because I don't get into product sales. I'm strictly science. Of course, I work with the company.
So we'll make sure that shows up in
the show notes.
In the show notes. He is Professor Brian Peskin. The website, brianpeskin.com. If you feel like I feel after listening to him talk for an hour, you're definitely going to go to the website, and you're definitely going to
a little overwhelming.
Slowly through some of this stuff. This has been really fun. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thank you.
For Dr. Philip Ovadia, this is the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to talking to y'all next time.
Thank you.
Chances are you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't need to change your life and get healthier. So take action right now. Book a call with Dr. Ovadia's team. One small step in the right direction is all it takes to get started. Contact us at ifixhearts.com/talk. That's ifixhearts.com/talk.